Welcome back to Still a Part of Us. I've just been having the most delightful afternoon. I mean, I realized we were talking about a very heavy and sad topic, but I have really just enjoyed my time with Amy today. So, Amy, thank you so much again for coming back on and chatting with us about your daughter Ava and your journey through grief.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and it is my pleasure to be able to talk with you today
Yeah.
about my daughter.
Yeah. Can you, for our audience, just to get them updated on where we're at? So tell me what happened to Ava. How long ago did this happen, and what happened to her?
Okay, so yes, I had my daughter Ava Madison in April 2008, so 16 years ago. I was about 38 and a half weeks and went to the hospital after laboring all night, thinking that we were getting close, and went into the triage. They checked me, said I was dilated to a 10. Down to the room we went and got set up with the monitors, and then found out that she did not have a heartbeat and had to deliver quickly. They thought maybe that they could save her or whatever, but she had passed
Yeah,
previously. So it was very much shock and surprise, and I had to deliver pretty quickly.
yeah,
And thank goodness I was able to.
yeah. I would recommend listening to Amy's story because she goes into a little bit of that and some of the details because uh, I I told her this a couple times already. I was like, I don't know if I could have done that. What you did. So there was a lot of bravery and courage there that had to happen. So, but thank you again, Amy, for coming on. And I wanted to jump in really quickly because one thing I neglected to ask you after at the end of your story, because you guys had a lovely funeral, not with Ava's body there because of the way this funeral home had done this type of service. You
Mm,
guys would have a funeral, and then the funeral home would bury the baby kind of separately at a different time, and you wouldn't necessarily have that kind of coincide. So, but then we chatted a little bit more, and you said that there was the actual like physical burying of her body. So, do you want to
yes,
kind of tell us what happened there and what
yes,
came of that?
yes. So the funeral is on Wednesday, and we got a call on Friday that they had buried her,
Hmm.
and if we wanted to come out at that time, that we could. So my husband and I and our two daughters drove out to where the cemetery was,
Hmm.
and got out of the car and walk over. And when you see, it wasn't a formal like grave or what have you.
Okay.
It was an area they called Babyland, and
Yeah.
so when I looked at the marker, it was almost like a silver round type of thing with the number on it,
Oh.
and that's where she was buried. And I literally, at that moment in time, more than the day I had her or the funeral or any of the days leading to that, that was the realization that she was gone, and then that I may have made the wrong decision at that moment in time, because
Mm,
that is not where I would have buried my child.
yeah.
And as nice as it is a service, it may be for different occasions and different time frames or whatever somebody's comfortable with, but it was not for me. And I almost wanted him to take me to the emergency room, because I laid on the ground there screaming um, so loud, and I couldn't breathe, and I really felt like I was going to have a heart attack
Hmm.
or something. The panic and the grief and the reality of what that was. But let alone the fact that she was buried, and probably not in a form or a fashion that I would ever have
Mm,
buried my child.
yeah.
And so it was horrific, to say the least. And I didn't go to the emergency room, but I ran like down the road, because I felt like I was going to explode, and I didn't know what to do. Um, and so down the road from there, I knew that I would never go to that cemetery, and I did not want her to be there. So I ended up having her exhumed about 3 months after she was buried,
Okay.
and cremated and brought back to our
To
house.
your
Which
home.
someday, when I pass, I will have her remains with me.
Yeah. You know, going to a physical location, so we have our son buried,
Hmm.
and, that is really it's hard. And I've heard of other moms just wanting just to lay down and put themselves on
Yes,
the grave and want to just die. They just wanna
yes, yes,
and I can understand that feeling completely, and so I can when you say I felt like I was gonna explode, and I was like, "Yeah, that's a very relatable feeling for a mom that has lost a baby and has
yes,
the baby buried." It's just oh,
yes.
it's rough.
You're not supposed to be detached,
Yeah.
and so when that's it, every one of your maternal instincts is
Is
like,
no,
no,
this is
this kid is
wrong.
with, yes,
Just feels
yes.
so wrong. I'm so sorry. That is just, yeah, I just completely relatable. Honestly, I was
Yes,
just like,
I know, and
"Oh,
I am so sorry to you too as we talk, and I see when you know exactly what I'm saying, and I see it in your eyes and in your soul, and I feel it too.
yeah,
And I mean that's a beautiful thing, but it's not, again, because it's that catch 22, because
yeah,
if I could take your pain away, I would.
yeah, yeah." We get each other.
Yes.
You all you other moms that are listening too that have gone through this, you get us.
Yes, you're not alone, and sometimes just to know that is so helpful, because I think
Yeah,
that you do feel completely alone.
yeah,
When you walk around Target, you see everybody with their babies, and you're standing there pining, and they have no clue, but we understand.
yeah. Amy, I wanted because it has been 16 years since you
Mhm.
lost your daughter. I am wondering if you can give us a like almost a bird's eye view of what your grief has looked like over the years. Early on and then kind of I mean you had your rainbow baby, right? Your quote unquote rainbow baby
Yes.
afterward and like how that was and then also like having your kids grow up and they're starting to have grandkids now, and so I would love for you to give us an idea of what how your grief has evolved or how you have changed over the
Yes.
years.
Um, so originally, I thought I would never um, come out of that,
Mhm.
and it did. It seemed very, very dark. My future at that time looked very dark. Nothing would be the same, and everything that was important that I looked forward to doing with her, with the other kids, and yet your kids still need to do that if you have kids
Yeah.
already, was painful. How can we do this? She's not here.
Mhm.
She was supposed to be here. And the first year, I think really you're just checked out on survival mode, and it
Mhm.
kind of becomes a blur. And everybody says, well, you'll get past the first year.
Yeah.
And then magically, after the first set of holidays and everything, we're
Mhm.
just, oh, hey, year two was even rougher than year one, because the natural anesthetic that your mind lets you be in to cope starts to wear down.
Yeah.
And year two becomes that whole, now it's even more vivid.
Yeah.
And year three, you're now realizing, after coming out of the fog and then getting through year two, you're like, wait a second here. Wait a minute. Now it's very clear. And the rest of the world has completely moved on.
Mhm.
And you are still saying, wait, you know,
Yeah. You feel kinda left
that
behind almost.
very left behind, very left behind. And still waiting for something to happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
Still waiting for that child to be there for, the Christmas, and supposed to be in the Christmas cards, and every time you see the family with the family stickers on the back of the windows, they used to
Yeah.
have, you
Oh,
know,
yeah, the little stick
the little
figures.
people,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there going, oh, it's
Yeah.
like,
What do I do? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, what do you do? I mean, because people don't want to talk to you about it. I When she passed away, I contacted our local newspaper. At that time, we still had
Mhm.
newspapers that they wrote on black and white print. Yes, I'm old. And vintage, I say.
Yeah, vintage.
Um, yes, and did a story about silent grief,
Oh,
because it was taboo,
Yeah.
very, very taboo. And people knew what happened, but nobody would speak to us about it.
Oh,
Had we
yeah.
lost the child at a different place or you lose a different family member, you have a lot of comfort and a lot of conversation. And you kind of really do it alone.
Yeah.
And that is a very hard bag to carry because people don't want to hear it or they don't know what to say. It's very uncomfortable for them.
Mhm.
Um, and so those first probably 5 years were excruciating,
Yeah.
excruciating. And I also carried a lot of guilt with me
Mhm.
that everybody told me it's not your fault. You didn't do anything. But as me and as a mom and as the one who carried that child, I did not think that
Oh,
way
yeah.
and look for answers. And I really suffered a lot of physical ramifications
Mm.
in my anxiety after she passed away. And I had a handicap parking spot at the doctor's office. They were like, "What are you here for tonight?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think I've got this, and I think I've got that," because you now know reality can happen and you're not exempt.
Yep. Yep.
And so those first 5 years were just really excruciating, and you don't sleep and you're thinking about it, and every commercial you see, and
Yeah.
everything is a reminder. Um, and you feel like your body failed you, and just a lot of things. I'm sure it falls on both parties, but for you as being the one who carried on the woman. And
Yep.
they're not rational,
Nope.
but grief is not rational.
Yeah.
And I have learned that now at this point. I have had a lot of grief in my life since the time that I lost her. I have evolved so far in that. And when I feel those feelings now, I can say to myself, those are not rational feelings. They're not true because grief is irrational.
Yeah.
So I have become friends with grief,
Mm.
ironically, as much as I don't care for it. I have become friends with it, and it's because of my daughter.
Yeah.
Because the work you have to do is so hard just to survive on a daily basis and not feel guilty for eating ice cream.
Yeah. Like little joys you feel guilty about, like
Yes,
laughing
everything.
or
Yes,
enjoying a whatever, right?
yes, a candy bar or smiling
Yeah.
or having a good time, or
Yeah.
you can't go on vacation because you don't deserve to.
Mhm.
All of those things. It is really hard to wrap your mind around that stuff and accept that. And so as time has went on, when you start to laugh and smile for the first time without feeling guilt, it is like
Y
you have been completely reset in your life.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, I just laughed. Hey, we went on vacation.
Yeah.
We had a great time. And I didn't sit here feeling how guilty I am that
Yeah.
Ava's not here
Mhm.
or seeing the other kids. And it seemed like at that time, everybody who had a kid was named Ava.
Oh,
So everywhere you go, there's a
reminded.
family next to you. Yep. Ava, Ava, come over here. Ava, down the street. And I'm just sitting there and you hear that name and the flood of emotions goes right back to ground zero
Yeah.
for a very, very long time. And now, as time has went on, I have clients who have children named Ava and relatives who have people named Ava. And when I hear her name, I think of I have an Ava
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I have a beautiful Ava. I don't feel that burning, raw feeling of that hurt that was taken away from
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
I celebrate the fact that I have an Ava too,
Yeah.
and she would be this age, and I don't know what she would look like, but I know that I can picture where she would be at this time, and you do come you do come a long way, and it's a lot of hard work, and sometimes you're hanging on by the edge of the cliff and you really don't know if you can hang on, but you do, and somehow you do. And then when you can help the next person
Yeah.
who is miscarrying or in a loss, and the things that they tell you, what people say to them, you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, let me tell you something.
Mhm. Mhm.
and just give them inspiration. When I met one of my friends, who's still been my friend now, at the support group
Mhm.
4 days after Ava died, I went to the support group
Mhm.
and there was nobody else there. And the girl who led it called this gal to come because
Oh.
she had lost her daughter, same time frame as me, but 7 years before me.
Oh, okay.
And she walked in the room that night, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and it was like, there's somebody here who has made it past where I think I'm not going to. And just seeing her, just knowing that she came in with a smile on her face and she had makeup on and her hair was done and she could talk to me without breaking down
Yeah,
and she was past a certain point. It was like that's all I needed to know,
and to
that
see.
somebody else
Yeah.
felt that pain and went through those experiences and made it. And she said to me at one time early in the beginning of it, she said, Amy, I think we are like the special people.
Excuse me.
And I remember looking at her and I was like, wow, you must be like absolutely bonkers. You know, how could you say that I'm a special person? Hello, do you remember my daughter just died?
Yeah, yeah.
And now I tell her, and I have probably the past 5 years, I say, hey, when you told me that, you're right. You were so right.
Yeah,
But I thought you were completely out of your mind and callous and cold and horrible.
yeah,
But you were so, so right.
yeah. It takes time to see, yeah, to get out of the weeds because 'cause you're kind of in the weeds at the very beginning and just can't see
Oh,
anything at
no,
all.
you
You
can't.
don't know which way's up,
No,
you don't know where you're going. It's
no.
really,
Eh, eh,
yeah, it's really nice having, I just wanna say, like, that's once again, I thank you for coming on because sometimes you need somebody that has traversed this path before you
yes,
to say, "You're gonna be able to make it." There's
yes,
ways around these ridiculous, like, rivers and mountains and
yes,
stuff like that, and
yes,
grateful for
yes,
people
because you
that.
just don't think it. Yeah, you just don't feel it. You absolutely,
Mm-mm. You're like,
unequivocally do not feel
"I'm not
that.
gonna make it." Yeah.
For me. Yeah, this is it for me.
Yeah.
This is it. And this pain will always be this way.
Mhm.
And I don't really care.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible place to be in. And I did live that for a long time too, but you can and
Yeah.
you will come through it.
Yeah. And of course, there are people that like they do end up having a really bad postpartum and clinical suppression.
Yes.
Definitely get some help if you like professional help if
Yes.
you need it. So,
Yes.
but yeah, I
Oh
as
yes. I
being,
mean, I struggle too. Meds,
yep,
therapy,
yep, mhm,
support group.
yep,
Listen, I'm going to say retail therapy.
yeah,
There were some vacations that were certainly spent, furniture, clothing.
yep,
I mean, there's a whole lot of things
that you can do to help.
that we did, good, bad, or otherwise.
Yes, yeah,
Some were pretty, some were
some
not
are
so
not so
pretty,
pretty. Yeah,
and yet you do find a way to to come through that. But believe me, I'm not saying there's no lip service. It was very, very harried, and when Tom and I both started grieving in different directions, that was very difficult. I still wanted to stay where I was, and he did not.
yeah,
Coping mechanism.
yeah.
He can only handle so much and couldn't take my own pain, and you can't help somebody, right?
When you,
So
yes,
there is a lot of heavy duty, hard work and things that you look back on. You're like, well, I don't know how we're going to pay that thing off, but who cares? You know what I mean? And and or indulging in things that you shouldn't at the moment, just to whatever it is. But it does pass. Where those things are fewer and far between.
yeah, yeah. It's nice to. I like the analogy where they talk about grief, where you're like before you were, well, my therapist, she talked about grief this way, and I really appreciated it. But she said, at the beginning when you have your loss, you are just like a little soup bowl, and the grief is like it's in the middle of your bowl, and it takes up all the room. And as you get, as you experience life more and you grow as a person, your vessel gets bigger and bigger, and
Yes,
the grief is still there,
yes,
rolling around and stuff like that, but
yes,
your capacity as a person gets bigger and, you're able to handle things a little bit better without feeling like you're
yes.
getting crowded out by the grief always, and
Yes.
it's not all so as all-consuming, so
No, but it's hard to see that when you're in it. I
in the
remember
middle.
going to the therapist every week and thinking this is going to be the key to help today,
Yeah,
and leaving and feeling more defeated
yeah, yeah,
than when I walked in the door.
yep,
Because I was like, I got back in the car and everything you said really just makes me go back to the fact that no one can change this.
yeah,
There is no answer for this
there isn't.
except hard work and feeling like you're walking through in a total fog
Yeah,
and pain.
yep, yep. Now, you mentioned a little bit before that you and your husband started to kind of grieve a little differently. And tell me how that went, because this is a pretty common theme when it comes to,
Yes,
well, people in general, honestly. Like, we all kind of grieve a
yes,
little differently. It seems like there's a little bit more of a difference between men and women. Not, I mean, like, I'm not doing black and white type of things, but it does seem
right.
like women need to be in it a little bit longer, and then the men want to just be able to, not necessarily, like, forget about it or anything, but
No,
they need some other things to
compartmentalize.
yeah, exactly,
Hmm.
to put things where they need to be, and because they are doers and solvers, it feels like,
Yes.
generally. But tell me how your husband dealt with it, how he expressed his grief, and how you guys interacted, when
Um, yes, in the beginning it was so great because it felt like we were very much on the same
Mhm,
page. And then as time went on, he became enmeshed in his own work. And
mhm.
then, by the time he came home, I mean, I continued to work too. I went back to work 2 weeks after
Oh
she
my
passed away.
goodness, okay.
I couldn't sit in the house.
Yeah,
I could not just sit there and just think about things and what they should be. So I don't know if that was a good decision or not, but it was a decision that I made at that time
right,
to at least try to work.
okay,
Um, and I still wanted to talk about her all the time.
okay.
And he stopped talking about her, which to me felt like he just forgot about her.
Yep.
And I think he also, because everybody was like, how's your wife? How's your wife? How's your wife? Well, not him.
No.
The initial question is, how are you and your wife? And then it goes to, how's your wife?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was overlooked.
Yeah.
And his grief was just as much as mine, just in two different ways.
Yep.
And I think he just started to compartmentalize it more and more. And he did not want to bring it up to me talking about her because he did not want to see that pain
Mm.
on my face.
Yeah.
And there's no answers for that. And I mean, it was very difficult once you get on two different pages and going to the support groups and talking to other couples. That was always a big topic for everybody.
Mhm.
So that helped to know that that's just kind of the way that things went.
Yeah.
And I would tell him we have to talk about her. But there were some tumultuous months and in times, and again, we stuck through all of that stuff, but it was not easy.
Yeah. It takes some time and takes some work to give your partner and yourself your own grieving styles and space.
Yes,
I don't know
yes.
how else to say it, but,
No, because everybody's coping mechanisms are
mhm, mhm,
different as we are, and so just because somebody is not talking doesn't mean they're not feeling it,
mhm. Yeah.
and just because somebody talks about it doesn't mean it's as heavy as what they're saying it is either. So
Yeah.
communication, but that's not an easy thing to do
You're in the
when you're in
middle
grief.
of, yeah, grief, and
Yes.
you're just trying to cope yourself. You're just trying to
Yes.
go get through the day.
Survive. Yes.
I'm curious if you have any advice for other couples that might be going through this, specifically about how to give your partner the space and the time that they may need.
I think looking at it now down the road and all the other challenges that we've had in our marriage coming from that point, how we
Mhm.
dealt with that to where we are now, um, you just have to be understanding that your partner is going through this as well, and you got to try and talk to each other. And if they seem a little bit distant and quiet, sometimes you can just say, "Hey, do you need that time?"
Mm.
So it doesn't feel personal. Um, because a lot of times you take it so personal because you're on the edge of the emotions as well.
Yeah.
And I think if you can just communicate that somebody needs some time to themselves and it's not a personal thing,
Yeah.
just let me have some time to process different and always take the pause. It's easy for me to say this, not easy for me to do, but take the pause before you go on that. And I wish that we were such like family people and would stay in our lane together. And that was good. I wish him and I would have took more time as a couple
Mm.
during that time
Okay.
to go to dinner, to just
Just
try and do things to take some of that off.
yeah.
Because in the time you get so enmeshed and you really don't want to do much of anything, but you have to reconnect when you do, then you can talk about your feelings much more easily to each other
Yeah.
and share your pain.
Yeah.
And I think that's important just to know you're both still in pain, but you might handle it completely different.
Yeah. I like that taking a little bit of time together as a couple because you do
Yes.
lose yourself because now you're Ava's mom who passed away, right? I mean, like
Yes.
you take on these different roles
Yes.
and then you
Oh,
forget
yes.
who you are as a wife, as a mother to these other girls. And
Yes.
so yeah, I like that, like kind of checking back in with who you are as a person
Yes,
and as a
yes, because
couple.
you totally lose yourself. You totally lose that couple because it's just over consumed
Hmm.
with the grief, the sadness, the stress,
Yeah.
the everything that comes along with it. So yeah, if you taking time together is huge because again, you're the only two who know
Who were
what
there.
that means, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be. It's going to be emotional, but it doesn't have to be that bad where you're checking out
Hmm. Yeah. I like that a lot.
from each other.
Yeah, from each other, yeah.
Yes,
You need to be there for each other in whatever however that looks.
yes.
And so Amy, and also I just wanted to bring in your girls, your 2 other girls that you had. I know that
Hmm.
they when you told them the news, you said that they were very it was very quiet. And
Yes.
I'm curious how you guys have incorporated Ava into your family life and how the those girls in interact with her, if that makes any sense. I don't know how else to put it. Just like
Yes.
how did they consider Ava as they grew up?
Yes. So I mean, once the initial shock was, it was very important for me to make that known that she was part
Mm.
of our
Mhm.
family. And so we holidays we had stuff for her. I bought if I seen little books that said Ava's name on
Mm.
them, then we would buy the book that had Ava's name, and then we would read it, and that's Ava stuff. And we put like a little. We had a drawer in my room that had her little stuffed animal that played music and her books and her pictures were in there. And so we would bring those out maybe once a week or whatever just to keep it going that they knew that she was there. Birthdays we did and I get talk about those old window stickers we used to have. I had one made up that said in memory
Oh.
of Ava Madison, April 2008 on the
Mhm.
back of the car. And that was important for me because I so missed her being in the vehicle,
Mhm.
right? Because
Mhm.
you picture that.
Yeah.
So when I put that sticker, it was like she was with us.
Yeah.
And so that was a part of that too. And I still had them wear their big sister shirts. It took a minute,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It took a minute, but it was important because they were big sisters.
Yep.
And I mean, we did all kinds of stuff at holiday time. We would put some kind of token, some kind of picture, some kind of angel, some kind of something into the family picture that
Oh,
signified
that was her.
yes.
That's great.
Yes, because I never wanted her to be forgotten because she just wasn't physically present, but
Yeah.
I didn't want her to be forgotten. So, yeah, everything, initials on things or in their rooms. If I hung up, like you'd put the kids' initials on the wall and the letters, well, then she would have her
Her.
own space and place too. And still to this day, and I just recently showed my grandchildren her
Oh,
box of things and explained to them that this was also their aunt and
yeah.
and it was very interesting. They're 7, 4 and 2.5, and
Okay.
so it was very
They're
interesting.
like, "Where is
And
she?" You know?
yeah, but they looked at her hair and they held those
Oh,
feet and they looked at all of her pictures.
yeah.
And it was important to me. I want them to know who she is and who she was, and she's very much a part of our life. And again, every year on her birthday, I do significant things. It was her 13th, and I had this book called My Beautiful Broken Shell somebody gave me when she passed away,
Mhm.
and I must have bought 150 copies of it. And I wrote this was for her 13th birthday, and I
Oh,
got it when she passed, and so I passed it out. So anything we can do to carry her spirit on, um, to help the world to be a better place,
yeah.
then that's yeah, that's the things that we do. So she's always incorporated
That I
one way or the
Yeah,
other.
one way or the other, and that is great. I
Yes,
think, and if that works for your family, because I know there's some families that are a little bit more hesitant and,
yes,
but then I also for me, it really helps us incredibly to talk with our kids.
yes,
Our son's very much part of our family, and,
yes.
it just doesn't feel right if we're like, "Oh, we're just a family of 4." No, we're a family of 5. Like,
Right.
that's
Yes, and I
different.
had friends, through my support group that very much kept that together, and we would talk about that all the
Mhm.
time. I'm like, "Well, how do you explain how
Yeah.
many children you have?"
Yeah.
And they would tell me, and I'm like, "But wait a minute, what about so and so?" But see, they they handled it different,
Mhm.
and that was
And that's
okay for
okay.
them. Everybody's way is good for them. Nobody has to be like the other
Yep.
person. Um, but for me, it was important. But I did stop doing that
Yeah.
at a certain point in time. It can't I will talk about her still if somebody says, "Well, how many kids do you have?" I will say that, but before I had to, like, you know what I mean, make
I
sure
need to make
nobody ever
mhm.
forgot her.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, and
So again, it's
it
just time
it
changes
it does.
some things.
And sometimes the situation because you're not gonna necessarily tell the person at the grocery store that
Well, I did,
Yeah.
but that was a whole different
We
that was a whole different
we
story.
sometimes will because we know a lot of people at the grocery store, but then
I
after
know. I
some
mean,
yeah.
yes. So, but to each their own,
Yes,
and it
you
was
have to do you.
amazing
Mhm.
when you go through loss and you do talk to people, how many people have had it, but they don't or they didn't, and in the past they were not allowed to talk about it. It
Yes,
was
yes,
it
very
was
taboo.
to be very, very taboo.
Mhm,
And so I would say, well, what was your child's name? Did you name them or whatever? And I'm like, I'll remember that person, but just to
mhm.
even if nobody else knows it,
Yeah,
just to know that somebody thinks of their child,
yeah.
and I'll think of your child, and if you want to talk about it, great, and if you don't, that's okay too. But just to tell somebody, people I never in a million years would have known had lost a baby 50 years ago,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that still
Something
felt that way to them.
yeah, mhm. It's still
Yes.
special, still hard, still all of the things
Oh
and
yes, it never goes away. But to see that in their face, just
mm,
to have somebody ask,
yeah,
was like, wow.
yeah,
So,
makes a
but to
huge
each
difference.
their own
Yep,
method.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Amy, I do like to ask this question. That's one of my favorite questions. It's 2
Oh,
parts.
good.
One of the parts is there anything that people did or say that helped you through your grief? And I'm talking over the entire 16-year span. I'm curious if there was
Yes.
anything that was really super outstandingly that was helpful because a lot of people listen to this podcast for some also to support people that are going through this. So is there anything that
Yes.
really stood out that you're like, "Oh, this was a lifesaver," or "I'm so glad somebody said this to me," or yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And learning grief as I have now, it's extremely important. I kind of dive bomb
Mhm.
into people's grief now in a big way. Just supporting somebody with a hug
Mm.
or a thought or hey, I'm thinking of you down the road as time goes on when everybody forgets and life goes back to normal.
Yeah.
Like that's huge.
Yeah.
Because people get busy
Yep.
and they move on their life as they should, and then you're still sitting there, and it's like, so if somebody just acknowledge you, even if it's the smallest
Mhm.
of things. Many people share their grief journeys with me because I talk to people all day long. I do hair, my clients, and I'm very in depth and very get to the nitty gritty of things, and just their inspirational stories that they shared with me and seeing their survival. And again, just learning that there's things you can say and things that you shouldn't say. I think
Yes.
everybody is well intentioned,
Mhm.
but I mean, it's hard to say over the years. I think it's just you learn, and people that have been through stuff, you know who they are
Mhm.
because they have a whole different tone with you. It's just a different thing. It's just an understanding, even if it's just a look.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many people I encountered that lost children of all ages,
Yes.
and you hear some of those stories, and I can't wrap my mind around,
Mhm.
sitting next to the 8-year-old who had terminal
Yep.
cancer, and holding their hand and going through that, and just some of those experiences that I think to myself, okay, well, if you can do that,
Yeah.
I can do this. I can support you. Whoever told, it's
Yeah.
talking. It's that conversation
Yep.
into topics that a lot of people
Don't feel
don't like to
comfortable
talk.
going. I love
Yes,
that because I think that sometimes we just that simple act of, mentioning their baby or just like you said, I just ask their name, and that's one of our
yes,
big deals. That's why we start every single podcast episode that is a birth story with the baby's name, because we
yes.
don't get to say our baby's name that often,
Exactly, yes,
and
and that's so huge, and, being considerate, if you're invited to a baby shower,
yes.
that you may not be able to come, and please don't take it personal, but please try and remember
Yeah.
that, and there's a lot of people at this. I did a wedding party a couple months back, and these girls are all in their childbearing early
Mhm.
years, and there's some babies there, and then there's the girls who are infertile,
Yeah.
and then there's the girls who are miscarrying,
Yeah.
all in this room, and they're much younger than me, and I'm absorbing all of these things, and I'm watching the look on their face, and
Mm.
and that pain inside when somebody's saying, "Oh, this baby's screaming and I can't take it," and they're like, I would give anything to have,
To have a baby
that
there.
baby.
Mhm.
And so I remember people putting their hand on my shoulder,
Hmm.
or just giving you that look like,
I see
I
you.
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're heard.
Yeah.
Yes, and I see you,
Yeah.
and you'll be okay.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. Just
Yes.
support of any kind.
Yes. Those little actions just make the hugest difference. I always wanna shout out my sister-in-law, Lauren, and Jenny. I have amazing sister-in-laws, but they are the ones that will bring up my son just in the middle of
Yes,
whatever, and they're just so
yes,
sweet about it, and I just love that.
yes.
They're the best. So,
Yes, that's awesome. Yes, I listened to, your story, and your family support, and that is wonderful.
yeah, makes
Yes, and you're lucky to have that.
yeah,
Very lucky to
super
have that.
lucky.
Yes.
Okay, and then Amy on the other side, was there anything that is a little harder to hear or something somebody did that you're like, "Oh, that was probably not the best thing to do or say?"
Well, yes, those are the easier ones
Those are the
to,
easier ones.
because every support group I went to, I was like, oh, well, every time that I heard something. So, and I do understand, and the girls at the support group used to say to me, they're just trying to help you, and they
Mhm.
don't know what to say.
Yeah. Exactly.
And in retrospect, I do see that for
Mhm.
the most part of people. But I have found the best thing to do is just say I'm sorry
Mhm.
and hug somebody and say if there's anything I can do for you and leave it at that. Comparing your pet loss,
Yeah.
I know how you feel because my dog died,
Yeah. Yeah.
is a little abrasive.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing that you have other children.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, but that doesn't replace the one
Yep.
that I just had.
Mhm.
You're young, you'll have more,
Yep.
and if you don't, oh well.
Oh, that little
Was
last
it
part.
meant to
I don't
be?
think I heard that part before.
Oh, yes, uh-huh,
Oh,
and,
well.
yeah, oh well, and, you've got an angel up there.
Yeah,
Well, we didn't want an angel.
yeah,
It's not that I don't concur
yeah,
at some point in time,
yeah.
but that's not it's not,
That doesn't mean that I'm not missing them here, like, I really would love them to be here.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes, there's a lot of things that are said that I know are supposed to be, well, it was just a miscarriage. You didn't know that baby anyways. And I'm like, I had a 6-week miscarriage. I had a 15-week loss. Full term.
yeah,
It's
the
not just
yeah,
a miscarriage.
yeah,
And you don't just get on and get over it.
yeah,
That was, sentiments that were said, or just ignoring, you trying to explain to somebody that you are in a great deal of pain and things are not easy, and no, you don't want to come to the holidays.
yep, yep,
No, I don't want to be there.
nope,
My baby was supposed to be there this year. I pictured what my baby was going to wear this year.
yeah,
They had matching outfits. No, I can't come and act like everything is okay.
yeah,
um and people get upset with you for not, attending those things, and it's like, I'm sorry. It's not personal. Maybe you just, and again, I know they don't want to see it and it makes them uncomfortable,
Mhm.
but you can't think about yourself.
Yeah.
You have to think about the person who's in pain
Yeah. I
and support them in however it looks for them.
yeah.
And if they can't make it this holiday,
Yep.
that's okay. If they want to order Chinese food
Mhm.
on Christmas Eve and sit there and hide in their bedroom and get a new cat, I mean, that's
Perfectly
that's
fine.
personal experience. Yes, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. And that is one thing for the families that are supporting somebody that has lost it, giving them a little bit of leeway on that type
Yes,
of thing. Because I realize holidays can be fraught with, all sorts of things anyway, and to add that extra layer for somebody that has lost a baby that's rough. Like, those first
yes,
set of holidays really are tough, and
yes,
to give people
yes,
some
and or
room.
being around other babies.
Other babies, oh,
We
y
stopped going
d
to church.
yep,
There were so many girls that were
yep,
pregnant at the same time as me, and coworkers and relatives and all this and that. And then everybody keeps coming to these occasions where they're with their children,
yeah.
and you're walking in the door without one. And it's not easy to see and sit in that. And you got to have some grace,
Yeah,
some sensitivity given to you that that's not. And no, I don't want to. No, I can't hold your baby.
yeah. No, I don't
I
want
can't. I can't hold your
I
baby
just
right
can't.
now. Like
Yes.
I can't. And when I do, I picture my child who is not alive,
Yeah.
and I can't. Someday I will. I mean, now I take everybody's babies,
Y
and I'm
ex
changing their diet. I'm doing
Yeah,
everything,
exactly.
but for a long time, that was not a possibility for
Mhm.
me. And you can hear people talking in another room about you, and oh, it has been this long. It's been 3 years. What's wrong with them?
Yeah,
Well, I'm in pain.
yeah. It's
That's what it is.
there's just way too many little milestones in those first few years that are just so big, right? There's the
Yes,
crawl, there's the eating food for the first time, and there's walking, and
yes,
you're missing out on all of those things, and so, yes, it is so hard to be
yes.
around other little
Even when
babies
it's
or
the first
toddlers, yeah.
Yes, even when it's the first day of school still.
Oh, that was a disaster.
I'm a basket case.
A
Yes,
disaster.
it's a disaster.
Yeah. Like, I was a
Yes,
disaster this year or
yes.
last year. It was
This
last
year,
year. He would have been going into kindergarten last year.
yes, right. It's a disaster. I know. This year I took the day off. I didn't even go into work. I laid in bed and was kind to myself and
Good.
watched TV because my youngest is in the 8th grade, the other two, and I'm like, my Ava would have been in high school.
Yeah.
And I can't get past those things.
Yeah.
Those are certain times, and it's okay, and I should feel that way, and I will always feel that way.
Mm.
Those are big milestones
Huge.
and big important lives as a parent, and so yes, you will always feel that way. It will not always go, but it won't be as bad.
Yeah.
But there will be times when it goes right back, and every
Yeah.
grief and every loss you have after, whomever that is, sets you right back to your initial grief.
Yeah.
And that is something that takes a long time to work through.
Yeah. It feels like there's a whiplash sometimes. You're like, "Oh, I'm
It's a
back."
serious whiplash. Yes, it is. But I have to tell you, it does get better.
Okay.
It really does. But it takes a long time.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yep. Because 'Cause we're human and we love and we
Yes,
love our family, so
yes,
Amy, this has been really such a pleasure to talk to you. You've just had some really wise words and honestly, just real talk. It felt really like, oh yes, I'm so glad. I felt like, oh yeah, so good. I'm glad I'm, I'm not the only one that felt this.
Isn't it nice when you hear
Yes.
that though, that you're not the only one because you hold those
Yeah.
emotions so near and dear to your heart, and everybody wants you to say like, "Oh yes, it's this and that," but let's get to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
It stinks, and you feel a lot of
Yep.
things that you don't really want to share because it feels so much. But when you do, you realize they're just feelings, and they're not necessarily the truth.
Yeah. Yes.
And to share that, but
Ex-
you do carry that weight.
it is exactly right. So Amy, I know that you had was there anything that you wanted to share that I think you do and I'm hoping you do as kind of a way to close our time
Yes,
together. So, can you
yes.
tell us a little bit more about what this is?
Okay, so this is a poem that in the first year or two after Ava passed, and we had our October 15th pregnancy and infant
Mm,
loss awareness
mhm,
ceremony. And one of the girls who led the group gave me this. She said, I know this is something you will want to read.
mm,
And I was like, I don't know if I want to read anything. And she said, read it over and then tell me. And so I did. And I was like, okay, this kind of summed up where I was with my grief and preparing for this, coming into this and reading some of the things that you had talked about. I thought this popped in my head immediately, and I searched it up, and as I read it today and wrote it out, wow, it really did. Coming from where I was to
mm,
where I am now, it really is just one of these things that when you hear it or you read it, you do know that you're not alone. There are many, many, many of us who are in these same things, and we do get through, and you will make it, and life will change for you, and it won't be what it feels like right now. And just knowing there's that opening of hope, of the sun ray coming through the clouds, and you'll feel that sun again and be able to be like, man, this feels great
yeah,
today, and sit in the sun and not feel that pain as soon as you feel a point of happiness.
mm,
And that's how it changes.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you're ready,
I
I'll
am
read it.
ready.
I write big, so I have lots of papers.
Perfect, perfect.
but but it still is just good. So, anyways, yes, this is what I read, and as I read it too, you'll understand where I'm saying how it actually travels right along
Mhm,
from where I was to where I am to where I will continue to go
yeah.
for as long as I'm here. And thank you again, Winter, for everything that
Oh,
you're doing.
yeah,
You're helping people in your pain, and what your son can give to the world through you and your husband is such a beautiful gift. And it's not easy to do it, but it's one of the most fruitful, wonderful things that you can do. And I think every part of our life that goes here, if you could share that,
yeah,
it is, it's okay,
yeah.
and it's that healing for everybody.
Yeah,
And he's, your son is special. He's going to change some things in the
I
world.
know.
He's doing it through his incredible mother, and I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is called A Pair of Ugly Shoes. I am wearing a pair of shoes. They are ugly shoes, uncomfortable shoes. I hate these shoes. Each day I wear them, I wish I had another pair. Some days these shoes hurt so bad, I do not think I can take another step, yet I continue to wear these shoes. I get funny looks wearing these shoes. I can tell in others' eyes that they are glad these shoes are mine and not theirs. They never talk about my shoes. To learn how awful my shoes are might make them uncomfortable. To truly understand these shoes, you must walk in them, but once you put them on, you can never take them off. I now realize that I am not the only one who wears these shoes. There are many people in the world that wear these shoes. Some women, and like me, that ache daily as they try to walk in these. Some have learned how to walk in them, so they don't hurt quite as much. Some have worn the shoes so long that days will go by before they think of how much they hurt. Some will wear them so long that the pain is only there if they bump into something. No woman deserves to wear these shoes. These shoes have given me the strength to face anything. They have made me who I am. I will forever walk in these shoes of a woman who has lost a child. When I first read this, my shoes were so painful. I could not even sit in the chair without them throbbing, pulsating, causing tremendous anxiety about what it was doing to me. Reality of these shoes and that they were there forever. I had them on daily, at bedtime, at work, at dinner, on vacation, holidays. There was no escape in these shoes. But 16 and a half years later, I wear these shoes comfortably. Yes, I have them. They ache every once in a while. They may be uncomfortable, but I would not change them, for they have created a whole new person. I would have given anything to give those shoes away, but I couldn't, so I made the most of them. It was not easy, at times unbearable. My empathy, sympathy, compassion, and support for everyone and anyone who wears a pair of ugly shoes has grown so much. I am able to sit in rooms with all kinds of shoes, be comfortable to talk, acknowledge, or just be with the people who wear these shoes, instead of running away, as I felt a lot of the time people did to me when they looked at my shoes. I run towards the people with the ugly shoes. When you think you can't make it, hang on. When you feel this pain will always be debilitating, when you feel like you may never smile, when you feel guilty for laughing or having a good time, and these feelings just feel as if they will never change, just wait. You will make it. You will smile and laugh without feeling guilty, and the sun will shine again. The pain will lessen, and you will learn to live again. Not as you used to, but a whole new way of life. Not just the loss, but that your child existed, and you are so thankful for that. And be kind to yourself. Be very kind to yourself. You will make it through.
Oh, that was beautiful, Amy. Thank you for sharing that and the time you've spent with us today. It's been delightful. It's been wonderful, and I felt like I'm uplifted and
Oh,
hopeful.
oh, that makes me so happy. And be hopeful, Winter.
Yeah,
Be hopeful.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you once again for
Thank you so,
sharing
so
Ava with
much.
us as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you and all the stuff that you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure, actually. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you.